Atomic Habits by James Clear, the third law. Make it easy. Now, the third law includes 4 chapters, that is chapter 11, 12, 13, and 14. Beginning with chapter 11. Walk slowly but never backward. On the first day of class, Jerry, a professor at University of Florida, divided his film photography students into 2 groups. Everyone on the left side of the classroom, he explained, would be the quantity group. They would be graded solely on the amount of work they produced. On the final day of class, he would tally the number of photos submitted by each student. 100 photos would rate an A, 90 photos a B, 80 photos a C, and so on. Meanwhile, everyone on the right side of the room would be in the quality group. They would be graded on the excellence of their work. They will only need to produce 1 photo during the semester, but to get an A, it has to be nearly perfect image. At the end of the term, he was surprised to find that all the best photos were produced by the quantity group. During the semester, these students were busy taking photos, experimenting with composition and lighting, testing out various methods in the dark room and learning from their mistakes. In the process of creating hundreds of photos, they honed their skills. Meanwhile, the quality group sat around speculating about perfection. In the end, they had little to show for their efforts other than unverified theories and more mediocre photo. It is easy to get bogged down trying to find the optimal plan for the change, the fastest way to lose weight, the best program to build muscle, the perfect idea for side hustle. We're so focused on figuring out the best approach that we never get around taking an action. As Voltaire once wrote, the best is the enemy of the good. I refer to this as a difference between being in motion and taking action. The 2 ideas sound similar, but they're not the same. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning. Those are good things, but they don't produce a result. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. If I outline 20 ideas for articles I want to write, that's motion. If I actually sit down and write an article, that's an action. If I search for a better diet plan and read a few books on the topics, that's motion. If I actually eat a healthy meal, that's action. Sometimes motion is useful, but it will never produce an outcome by itself. It doesn't matter how many times you go walk to a personal trainer, that motion will never get you in shape. Only the action of working out will get the result you're looking to achieve. If motion does not lead to results, what do we do it? Why do we do it? Sometimes we do it because we actually need to plan or learn more. But more often than not, we do it because motion always allows us to feel like we are making progress without running the risk of failure. Most of us are experts at avoiding criticism. It does not feel good to fail or to be judged publicly. So we tend to avoid situations where that might happen. And that's the biggest reason why you slip into motion rather than taking action. You want to delay failure. It's easy to be in motion and convince yourself and you're still making progress. I have got conversations going into potential clients right now. That's good. We are moving in the right direction. Or I brainstormed some ideas for that book and I want to write. That is coming together. Motion makes you feel like you're getting things done, but really you're just preparing to get something done. When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, you need to change something. You don't want to merely be planning, you want to be practicing. If you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. You don't need to map out every feature of a new habit. You just need to practice it. This is the first takeaway of the third law. You just need to get your reps in. Now, how long does it actually take to form a new habit? Habit formation is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. The more you repeat an activity, the more the structure of your brain changes to become efficient at that activity. Neuroscientists call this long-term potentiation when referred to strengthening of connections between neurons and the brain based on the recent patterns of activities. With each repetition, cell-to-cell signaling improves and the neural connections tighten, first described by neuropsychologist Donald Hebb in 1949. This phenomenon is commonly known as Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. Repeating a habit leads to a clear physical changes in the brain. In musicians, the cerebellum, critical for physical movements like plucking a guitar string or pulling a violin bow, is larger than it is in non-musicians. Mathematicians, meanwhile, have increased grey matter in the inferior parietal lobe, which plays a key role in computation and calculation. Its size is directly correlated with the amount of time spent in the field. The older and more experienced the mathematician, the greater the increase in grey matter. When scientists analyzed the brains of taxi drivers in London, they found out that hippocampus, a region of the brain involved in spatial memory, was significantly larger in their subjects than in non-taxi drivers. Even more fascinating, the hippocampus decreased in size when a driver retired. Like the muscles of the body responding to regular weight training, particular regions of the brain adapt as they are used and atrophy as they are abandoned. Of course, the importance of repetition in establishing habit was recognized long before. Neuroscientists began poking around. In 1860s, the English philosopher George H. Lewis noted, in learning to speak a new language, to play on a musical instrument, or to perform unaccustomed movements, great difficulty is felt because the channels through which each sensation has to pass have not become established, but no sooner has frequent repetition cut a pathway than this difficulty vanishes. The action becomes so automatic that they can be performed while the mind is otherwise engaged. But common sense and scientific evidence agree. Repetition is a form of change. Each time you repeat an action, you're activating a particular neural circuit associated with that habit. This means that simply putting in your reps in one of the most critical steps you can take to encode new habit. It is why students who took tons of photos improved their skills, while those who merely theorized about perfect photos did not. One group engaged in active practice, the other in passive learning, one in action and the other in motion. All habits follow a similar trajectory, from effortful practice to automatic behavior, a process known as automaticity. Automaticity is the ability to perform a behavior without thinking about each step, which occurs when the non-conscious mind takes over. On the following page, you will see what it looks like when the researchers track the level of automaticity for an actual habit, like walking for 10 minutes each day. The shape of these charts, which scientists call learning curve, reveals an important truth about behavior change. Habits form based on frequency, not time. One of the most common questions I hear is how long does it take to build a new habit? But what people really should be asking is how many does it take to form a new habit? That is, how many repetitions are required to make a habit automatic? There is nothing magical about passing with regard to habit formation. It does not matter if it's been 21 days or 33 days or 300 days. What matters is the rate at which you perform the behavior. You could do something twice in 30 days or 200 times. It's the frequency that makes the difference. Your current habit have been internalized over the course of hundreds, if not thousands of repetitions. New habits require the same level of frequency you need to string together enough successful attempts until the behavior is firmly embedded in your mind and you cross the habit line. In practice, it does not really matter how long it takes for a habit to become automatic. What matters is that you take the action you need to make progress. Whether an action is fully automatic is of less importance. To build a habit, you need to practice it, and the most effective way to make habit happen is to adhere to the third law of behavior: change, make it easy. The chapters that follow will show you how to exactly do that. Chapter 12: The Law of Least Efforts. In his award-winning book, Guns, Germs and Steel, anthropologist and biologist Jared Diamond points out a simple fact. Different continents have different shapes. At first glance, this statement seems rather obvious and unimportant, but it turns out to have a profound impact on human behavior. The primary axis of the American runs from north to south. That is, the landmass of North and South America tends to be a tall and thin rather than wide and fat. The same is generally true for Africa. Meanwhile, the landmark that makes up Europe, Asia, and Middle East is the opposite. This massive stretch of land tends to be more east-west in shape. According to Diamond, this difference in shape played a significant role in spread of agriculture over centuries. When agriculture began to spread around the globe, farmers had an easier time expanding along east-west routes than along north-south ones. This is because location along the same latitude generally share similar climates, amounts of sunlight and rainfall, and changes in season. These factors allowed farmers in Europe and Asia to domesticate a few crops and grow them along the entire stretch of land from France to China. By comparison, the climate varies greatly when traveling from north to south. Just imagine how different the weather is in Florida compared to Canada. You can be the most talented farmer in the world, but it won't help you grow. Florida oranges is in the Canadian winter. Snow is poor substitute for soil. In order to spread crops along north-south routes, farmers would need to find and domesticate new plants whenever the climate changed. As a result, agriculture spread 2 to 3 times faster across Asia and Europe than it did up and down to America. Over the span of centuries, this small difference has a big impact. Increased food production allowed for more rapid population growth. With more people, these cultures were able to build stronger armies and were better equipped to develop new technologies. The changes started out small: a crop that spread slightly farther, a population that grew slightly faster, but compounded into substantial differences over time. The spread of agriculture provides an example of the third law of behavior change on the global scale. Conventional wisdom holds that motivation is a key to habit change. Maybe if you really wanted it, you'd actually do it. But the truth is, the real motivation is to be lazy and to do what is convenient. And despite what is least productive, bestsellers will tell you this is a smart strategy, not a dumb one. Energy is precious, and the brain is wired to conserve it whenever possible. It is human nature to follow the law of least efforts, which states that when deciding between two similar options, people will naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. For example, expanding your farm to the east where you can grow the same crops rather than heading north where the climate is different. Out of all possible actions we could take, the one that is realized is the one that delivers the most value for the least efforts. We are motivated to do what is easy. Every action requires a certain amount of energy. The more energy required, the less likely it is to occur. For your goal is to do 100 push-ups per day, that's a lot of energy. In the beginning, when you're motivated and excited, you can muster the strength to get started. But after a few days, such a massive effort feels exhausting. Meanwhile, sticking to the habit of doing 1 push-ups per day requires almost no energy to get started. And the less energy a habit requires, the more likely it is to occur. Look at any behavior that fills up much of your life and you will see that it can be performed with very low levels of motivations. Habits like scrolling our phones, checking emails, and watching television steal so much of our time because they can be performed almost without efforts. They are remarkably convenient. In a sense, every habit is just an obstacle to getting what you really want. Dieting is an obstacle to getting fit. Meditation is an obstacle to feeling calm. Journaling is an obstacle to thinking clearly. You don't actually want the habit itself. What you really want is the outcome the habit delivers. The greater the obstacle, that is, the more difficult the habit, the more friction there will be between you and your desired end state. This is why it is crucial to make your habits so easy that you will do them even when you feel you don't feel like doing it. If you can make your good habits more convenient, you will be more likely to follow through on them. But what about all the moments when we seem to do opposite? If we're also so lazy, and then how do we explain people accomplishing hard things like raising a child or starting a business or climbing Mount Everest? Certainly, you're capable of doing very hard things. The problem is that some days you feel like doing the hard work and some days you don't feel like, or some days you feel like giving in. On the tough days, it's crucial to have many things working in your favor as possible so that you can overcome the challenges life naturally throws your way. The less friction you face, the easier it is for your stronger self to emerge. The idea is to make it easy, is not to do easy things. The idea is to make easy possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. Now, how to achieve more with less efforts? Imagine you're holding a garden hose that is bent in the middle. Some water can flow through, but not very much. If you want to increase the rate at which the water passes through the hose, you want two options. The first option is to crank up the valve and force more water out. The second option is to simply remove the bend in the hose and let water flow through naturally. Trying to pump up your motivation to stick with a hard habit is like trying to force water through the bent hose. You can do it, but it requires a lot of efforts and increases the tension in your life. Meanwhile, making your habits simple and easy is like removing the bend in the hose. Rather than trying to overcome the friction in your life, you reduce it. One of the most effective ways to reduce the friction associated with your habits is to practice environment design. In Chapter 6, we discussed environment design as the method of making cues more obvious, but you can also optimize your environment to make actions easier. For example, when deciding where to practice a new habit, it is best to choose a place that is already along the path of your daily routine. Habits are easier to build when they fit into the flow of your life. You are more likely to go to a gym if it is on the way to the work because stopping does not add much friction to your lifestyle. By comparison, if the gym is off the path of your normal commute, even by just a few blocks, now you are going out of your way to get there. Perhaps even more effective is reducing the friction within your home or office. Too often, we try to start habits in high friction environments. We try to follow a strict diet while we are out to dinner with friends. We try to write a book in a chaotic household. We try to concentrate while using a smartphone filled with distractions. It does not have to be this way. We can remove the points of frictions that hold us back. This is precisely what electronic manufacturers in Japan began to do in 1970s. In an article published in New Yorkers titled Better All the Time, James writes, Japanese firms emphasize what came to be known as lean production, relentlessly looking to remove a waste of all kinds from the production process, down to redesigning workspaces so workers didn't have to waste time twisting and turning to reach their tools. The result was that Japanese factories were more efficient and Japanese products were more reliable than American ones. In 1974, service calls for American-made color televisions were 5 times as common as for Japanese televisions. By 1979, it took American workers 3 times as long to assemble their sets. I like to refer to this strategy as addition by subtraction. The Japanese companies looked for every point of friction in the manufacturing process and eliminated it. As they subtracted wasted efforts, they added customers and revenue. Similarly, when we remove points of frictions that sap our time and energy, we can achieve more with less efforts. This is one reason tidying up can feel so good. We are simultaneously moving forward and lightening the cognitive load our environment places on us. If you look at the most habit-forming products, you'll notice that one of the things these goods and services do best is remove little bits of frictions from your life. Meal delivery services reduce the friction of shopping for groceries. Dating apps remove the friction for making social introductions. Ride-sharing services reduce the friction of getting across town. Text messaging reduces the friction of sending a letter in the mail. Like a Japanese television manufacturer redesigning their workspaces to reduce wasted motion, successful companies design their products to automate, eliminate, or simplify as many steps as possible. They reduce the number of fields of each form. They pare down the number of clicks required to create an account. They deliver products with easy to understand directions and ask their customers to make fewer choices. When the first voice activated speakers were released, products like Google Home, Amazon Echo, and Apple HomePod, I asked friends what he liked about the product he has purchased. He said was just easier to say play some country music than to pull out his phone, open the music app and play and pick a playlist. Of course, just a few years earlier, having unlimited access to music in your pocket was a remarkable frictionless behavior compared to driving to the store and buying a CD. Businesses Business's never-ending quest to deliver the same result in an easier fashion. Similar strategies have been used effectively by governments. When the British government wanted to increase tax collection rates, they switched from sending citizens to a web page where the tax form could be downloaded to linking directly to the form. Reducing that one step in the process increased the response rate from 19.2% to 23.4%. For a country like United Kingdom, those percentage points represents millions in tax revenues. The central idea is to create an environment where doing the right thing is easy and as possible. Much of the battle of building better habits comes from finding ways to reduce the friction associated with the good habits and increase the friction associated with the bad ones. Now, prime the environment for future use. Oswald, an IT developer from Netsets, Mississippi, is also someone who understands the power of priming his environment. Now, Close dialed in his cleaning habits by following a strategy he refers to resetting the room. For instance, when he finishes watching television, he places the remote back on the TV stand, arranges the pillow on the couch, and folds the blanket. When he leaves his car, he throws any trash away. Whenever he takes a shower, he wipes down the toilet while the shower is warming up. As he notes, the perfect time to clean the toilet is right before you wash yourself in shower anyway. The purpose of resetting each room is not simply to clean up after the last action, but to prepare for the next action. When I walk into a room, everything is right in the right place. He wrote that because I do this every day in every room, stuffs always stay in good shape. People think I work hard, but I'm actually really lazy. I'm just proactively lazy. It gives you so much time back. Whenever you organize a space for its intended purpose, you are priming it to make the next easy action. For instance, my wife keeps a box of greeting cards that are pre-sorted by occasion: birthday, sympathy, wedding, graduation, and more. Whenever necessary, she grabs an appropriate card and sends it off. She is incredibly good at remembering to send those cards because she has reduced the friction of doing so. For years, I was the opposite. Someone would have a baby and would think I should send a card, but then weeks would pass by, and then time I remembered to pick up one from the store, it was too late. The habit wasn't easy. There are many ways to prime your environment so it's ready for immediate use. If you want to cook a healthy breakfast, place the skillet on the stove, set the cooking spray on the counter, and lay out plates and utensils you'll need the night before. When you wake up, making breakfast will be easy. These are simple ways to make good habits the path of least resistance. You can also invert this principle and prime the environment to make bad behaviors difficult. If you find yourself watching too much television, for example, then unplug it after each use. Only plug it back if you can. Say out loud the name of the show you want to watch. This setup creates just enough friction to prevent mindless viewing. If that does not do it, you can take it a step further. Unplug the television and take the batteries out of the remote after each use. So, it takes an extra 10 seconds to turn it back on. And if you're really hardcore, move the television out of the living room and into a closet after each use. You can be sure you'll only take it out when you really want to watch something. The greater the friction, the less likely the habit. Whenever possible, I leave my phone in a different room until lunch. When it's right next to me, I'll check it all morning for no reason at all. But when it is in another room, I really think about it, and the friction is high enough that I won't go get it without a reason. As a result, I get 3 to 4 hours each morning when I can work without interruptions. If sticking your phone in another room does not seem like enough, tell a friend or family member to hide it from you for a few hours. Ask a co-worker to keep it at their desk in the morning and give it back to you at lunch. It is remarkable how little friction is required to prevent unwanted behavior. When I hide beer in the back of the fridge where I can't see it, I drink less. When I delete social media apps from the phone, it can be weeks before I downloaded them again and log in. These tricks are unlikely to curb a true addiction, but for many of us, a little bit of friction can be difference between sticking to a good habit or sliding into a bad one. Imagine the cumulative impact of making dozens of these changes and living in an environment designed to make the good behaviors easier and the bad behaviors harder. Whether we are approaching behavior change as an individual, a parent, a coach, or a leader, we should ask ourselves the same question: how can we design a world where it's easy to do what's right? Redesign your life so that actions that matter most are also the actions that are easiest to do. Chapter 13: How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-Minute Rule. Twyla Tharp is widely regarded as one of the greatest dancers and choreographers of the modern era. In 1992, she was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship, often referred to as Guinness Grant, and she has spent the bulk of her career touring the globe to perform her original work. She also credits much of her success to simply daily habits. I begin each day of my life with a ritual, she writes. I wake up at 5:30 a.m., put on my workout clothes, my leg warmers, my sweatshirts, and my hat. I walk outside my Manhattan home, hail a taxi, and tell the driver to take me to Pumpkin Iron Gym at 91st Street and 1st Avenue when I work out for 2 hours. The ritual is not the stretching and the weight training I put my body through each morning at the gym. The ritual is the cab. The moment I tell the driver where to go, I have completed the ritual. It's a simple act, but doing it in the way each morning habitualizes it, making it repeatable, easy to do. It reduces the chance that I would skip it or do it differently. It is one more item in my arsenal of routines and one less thing to think about. Hailing a cab each morning may be a tiny action, but it is a splendid example of the third law of behavior change. Researchers estimate that 40 to 50% of our actions on a given day are done out of habit. It is already a substantial percentage, but the true influence in your habit is even greater than these numbers suggest. Habits are automatic choices that influence the conscious decision that follows. Yes, a habit can be completed in just few seconds, but it can also shape the actions that you take for minutes or hours afterward. Habits are like the entrance ramp to the highway. They lead you down in a path, and before you know it, you're speeding towards the next behavior. It seems to be easier to continue what you're already doing than to start something different. You sit through a bad movie for 2 hours. You keep snacking even when you're already full. You check your phone for just a second, and soon you have spent 20 minutes staring at the screen. In this way, the habits you follow without thinking often determine the choices you make when you are thinking. Each evening, there is a tiny moment, usually around 5:15 p.m., that shapes the rest of my night. My wife walks in the door from work, and either we change into our workout clothes and head to the gym, or we crash onto the couch, order Indian food, and watch The Office. Similar to Twyla Tharp hailing the cab, the ritual of changing into my workout clothes. If I change clothes, I know the workout will happen. Everything that follows, driving to the gym, deciding which exercises to do, stepping under the bar, is easy once I've taken the first step. Every day, there are a handful of moments that deliver an outsized impact. I refer to these little choices as decisive moments. The moment you decide between ordering takeout or cooking dinner. The moment you choose between driving your car or riding your bike. The moment you decide between starting your homework or grabbing the video game controller. These choices are a fork in the road. Decisive moments set the options available to your future self. For instance, walking into a restaurant is a decisive moment because it determines that what you are going to eat for lunch. Technically, you are in control of what you order, but in larger sense, you can only order an item if it is on the menu. If you walk into a steak house, you can get a sirloin or a ribeye, but not sushi. Your options are constrained by what's available. They are shaped by the first choice. We are limited by our habits. We are limited by where our habits lead us. This is why mastering the decisive moments throughout your day is so important. Each day is made up of many moments, but it is really a few habitual choices that determine the path you take. These little choices stack up, each one setting the trajectory for how you spend the next chunk of time. Habits are the entry point, not the end points. They are the cab, not the gym. Now, the 2-minute rule. Even when you know you should start small, it's easy to start too big. When you dream about making a change, excitement inevitably takes over and you end up trying to do too much and too soon. The most effective way I know is to counteract this tendency is to use 2-minute rule, which states when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do it. You'll find that nearly any habit can be scaled down to 2 minutes. The idea is to make your habits an easy and possible to start. Anyone can meditate for 1 minute, read one page, or put one item of clothing away. And as we have just discussed, this is a powerful strategy because once you've started doing the right thing, it is much easier to continue doing it. A new habit should not feel like a challenge. The action that follows can be challenging, but the first 2 minutes should be easy. When you want is a getaway habit that naturally leads you down to a more productive path. You can usually figure out the gateway habits that will lead your desired outcome by mapping out your goals on scale from very easy to very hard. For instance, running a marathon is very hard. Running a 5K is hard. Walking 10,000 steps is moderately difficult. Walking 10 minutes is easy. And putting your running shoes is very easy. Your goal might be to run a marathon, but your gateway habit is to put on your running shoes. That's how you follow the 2-minute rule. People often think it's wired to get hyped about reading one page or meditating 1 minute or making one sales call. But the point is not to do one thing. The point is to master the habit of showing up. The truth is, a habit must be established before it can be improved. If you cannot learn the basic skill of showing up, then you have little hope of mastering the finer details. Instead of trying to engineer a perfect habit, from the start, do the easy things on the more consistent basis. You have to standardize before you can optimize. As you master the art of showing up, the first 2 minutes simply becomes a ritual at the beginning of a larger routine. This is not merely a hack to make habits easier, but actually the ideal way to master a difficult skill. The more you ritualize the beginning of the process, the more likely it becomes that you can slip into the state of deep focus that is required to do great things. But doing the same warm-up before every workout, you make it easy to get into the state of peak performance. By following the same creative ritual, you make it easy to get into the hard work of creating. By developing a consistent power down habit, you make it easier to get to bed at a reasonable time each night. You may not be able to automate the whole process, but you can make the first action mindless, make it easy to start, and the rest will follow. The 2-minute rule can seem like a trick to some people. You know that the real goal is to do more than just 2 minutes, so it may feel like you are trying to fool yourself. Nobody is actually aspiring to read one page or do one push-up or open their notes. If you know it's a mental trick, why would you fall for it? If the 2-minute rule feels forced, try this. Do it for 2 minutes and then stop. Go for a run, but you must stop after 2 minutes. Start meditating, but you must stop after 2 minutes. Study Arabic, but you must stop after 2 minutes. It's not a strategy for starting, it's a whole thing. Your habit can only last 120 seconds. One of my readers used this strategy to lose over 100 pounds. In the beginning, he went to the gym each day, but he told himself that he wasn't allowed to stay for more than 5 minutes. He would go to the gym, exercise for 5 minutes, and then leave soon as the time was up. After a few weeks, he looked around and thought, well, I'm always coming here. I might well start staying a little longer. A few years later, the weight was gone. Journaling provides another example. Nearly everyone can benefit from getting their thoughts out of their head onto a paper. But most people give up after a few days and avoid it entirely because journaling feels like a chore. The secret to do always stay below the point where it feels like work. Greg, a leadership consultant from United Kingdom, built a daily journaling habit by specifically writing less than he felt like. He always stopped journaling before it seemed like a hassle. Ernest Hemingway believed in a similar advice for any kind of writing. The best way is to always stop when you are doing good, he said. Strategies like this work for another reason too. They reinforce identity you want to build. If you show up at the gym 5 days in a row, even if it's just for 2 minutes, you're casting votes for your new identity. You're not worried about getting in shape. You're focused on becoming a type of person who does not miss workouts. You're taking the smallest action that confirms the type of person you want to be. We rarely think about change this way because everyone is consumed by end goals. But one push-up is better than not exercising. 1 minute guitar practice is better than nothing at all. 1 minute reading is better than never picking up a book. It's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. At some point, once you have established the habit and you are showing up each day, you can combine the 2-minute rule with technique we call habit shaping to scale up your habits back up towards ultimate goal. Start by mastering the first 2 minutes of the smallest version of the behavior. Then advance to an intermediate step and repeat the process, focusing on just the first 2 minutes and mastering the stage before moving on to the next level. Eventually, you will end up with the habit you've originally hoped to build while still keeping your focus where it should be, on the first 2 minutes of the behavior. Nearly any larger life goal can be transformed into 2-minute behavior. I want to live a healthy and long life. I need to stay in shape. I need to exercise. I need to change into my workout clothes. I want to have a happy marriage. I need to be a good partner. I should do something each day to make my partner's life easy. I should meal plan for the next week. Whenever you are struggling to stick with a habit, you can employ the 2-minute rule. It's a simple way to make your habits easy. Now, coming to chapter 14, how to make a good habit inevitable and bad habits impossible. In the summer of 1830, Victor Hugo was facing an impossible deadline. 12 months earlier, the French author had promised his publisher a new book, but instead of writing, he spent the year pursuing other projects, entertaining guests, and delaying his work. Frustrated, Hugo's publishers responded by setting a deadline less than 6 months away. The book has to be finished in February 1831. Hugo concocted a strange plan to beat his procrastination. He collected all of his clothes and asked an assistant to lock them away in a large chest. He was left with nothing to wear except a large shawl. Lacking any suitable clothing to go for outdoors, he remained in his study and wrote furiously during the fall and winter of 1830. The Hunchback of Notre Dame was established 2 weeks early on January 14, 1831. Sometimes success is less about making good habits easy and more about making bad habits hard. This is an inversion of the third law of behavior change. Make it difficult. If you find yourself continually struggling to follow through your plans, then you can take a page from Victor Hugo and make your bad habit more difficult by creating what psychologists called commitment device. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that controls your action in the future. It is a way to lock in future behavior, bind you to good habits, and restrict you from bad ones. When Victor Hugo shut his clothes away so that he could focus on writing, he was creating a commitment device. There are many ways to create a commitment device. You can reduce overeating by purchasing food in individual packages rather than a bulk size. You can voluntarily ask to be added to the banned list at casinos and online poker sites to prevent future gambling spears. I've even heard of athletes who have to make weight for a competition choosing to leave their wallets at home during a week before weigh-ins so that they won't be tempted to buy fast foods. As another example, my friend and a fellow habit expert, Neer, purchased an outlet timer, which is an adapter that he plugged in between his internet router and power outlet. At 10 p.m. each night, the outlet timer cuts off the power to the router. When the internet goes off, everyone knows it is time to go to bed. Commitment devices are useful because they enable you to take advantage of good intentions before you can fall victim into temptations. Whenever I am looking to cut calories, for example, I will ask the waiter to split my meal into boxes before and go before the meal is served. If I waited until the meal came out and I told myself I'll just eat half, it would never work. The key is to change the task such that it requires more work to get out of good habit than to get started on it. If you're feeling motivated to get in shape, schedule a yoga session and play ahead of time. If you're excited about the business you want to start, email an entrepreneur you respect and set up a consulting call. When the time comes to act, the only way to bail is to cancel the meeting, which requires efforts and may cost money. Commitment devices increase the odds that you'll do the right things in the future by making bad habits difficult in the present. However, we can do better. We can make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Now, how to automate a habit and never think about it again. John Henry Patterson was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1844. He spent his childhood doing chores on the family farm and working shifts at his father's sawmill. After attending college at Dartmouth, Peterson returned to Ohio and opened a small supply store for coal miners. It seemed like a good opportunity. The store faced little competition and enjoyed a steady stream of customers, but still struggled to make money. That was when Peterson discovered his employees were stealing from him. In the mid-1800s, employee theft was a common problem. Receipts were kept in an open drawer and could easily be altered or discarded. There were no video cameras to review behavior and no software to track transactions. Unless you were willing to hover over the employee every minute of the day or to manage all transactions yourself, it was difficult to prevent theft. As Peterson mulled over this predicament, he came across an advertisement for a new invention called Ritty's Incorruptible Cashier. Designed by fellow Dayton resident James Ritty, it was the first cash register. The machine automatically locked the cash and receipts inside after each transaction. Peterson bought two for $50 each. Employee theft at his store vanished overnight. In the next 6 months, Peterson's business went from losing money to making $5,000 in profit, the equivalent of more than $10,000. Peterson was so impressed with the machine that he changed businesses. He bought the rights to Ritty's invention and opened the National Cash Register Company. 10 years later, National Cash Register has over 1,000 employees and was on its way to becoming one of the most successful businesses of its time. The best way to break a bad habit is to make it impractical to do. Increase the friction until you don't even have the option to act. The brilliance of the cash register was that it automated ethical behavior by making stealing practically impossible. Rather than trying to change the employees, it made the preferred behavior automatic. Some actions like installing a cash register pay off again and again. These one-time choices require a little bit of efforts but create increasing value over time. I'm fascinated by the idea that a single choice can deliver returns again and again, and I surveyed my readers on their favorite one-time actions that lead to better long-term habits. The table on the following page shares some of the most popular answers. Buy a water filter to clean your drinking water. Happiness, get a dog. Use smaller plates to reduce calorie intake. Happiness, move to a friendly social neighborhood. Of course, there are many ways to automate good habits and eliminate bad ones. Typically, they involve putting technology to work for you. Technology can transform actions that were once hard, annoying, and complicated into behavior that are easy, painless, and simple. It is the most reliable and effective way to guarantee the right behavior. It is particularly useful for behaviors that happen infrequently to become habitual. Things you have to do monthly or yearly, like rebalancing your investment portfolio, are never repeated frequently enough to become a habit, so they benefit in particular form from technology, remembering to do them for you. When you automate as much of your life as possible, you can spend your efforts on tasks machines cannot do. Each habit that we hand over the authority of technology frees up time and energy to pour into the next stage of growth. As mathematician and philosopher Alfred North wrote, civilization advances by extracting the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them. Of course, the power of technology can work against us as well. Binge watching becomes a habit because you have to put efforts and stop looking in the screen than to continue doing it. Instead of pressing a button to advance to the next episode, Netflix or YouTube will autoplay it for you. You have to do is to keep your eyes open. Technology creates a level of convenience that enables you to act on your smallest whims and desires. At the mere suggestions of hunger, you can have food delivered to your door. At the slightest hint of boredom, you can get lost in the vast expanse of social media. When your efforts required to act on your desired desires becomes effortlessly zero, you can find yourself slipping into whatever impulse arises at the moment. The downside of automation is that we can find ourselves jumping from easy task to easy task without making time for more difficult, but ultimately more rewarding work. I often find myself gravitating towards social media during any downtime. If I feel bored for just a fraction of seconds, I reach for my phone. It's easy to write off these minor distractions as just taking a break, but over time they can accumulate into serious issues. The constant tug, just one more minute, can prevent me from doing anything of consequence. During the year I was writing this book, I experimented with a new time management strategy. Every Monday, my assistant would reset the passwords on my social media accounts, which logged me into each device. All week, I worked out without distraction. On Friday, she would send me the new password. I had the entire weekend to enjoy what the social media had to offer until Monday morning when she would do it again. One of the biggest surprises was how quickly I adapted. Within the first week of locking myself out of social media, I realized I didn't need to check it nearly as often as I did before, and certainly didn't need each day. It had simply been so easy that it had become the default. Once my bad habit became impossible, I discovered that I did actually have the motivation to work on more meaningful tasks. After I removed the mental candy from my environment, it became much easier to eat the healthy stuff. When working in your favor, automation can make your good habit inevitable and your bad habits impossible. It is the ultimate way to lock in future behavior rather than relying on willpower in the moment. By utilizing commitment devices, strategic one time decisions, and technology, you can create an environment of inevitability, a space where good habits are not just an outcome you hope, but an outcome that is virtually guaranteed.